Thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to be here, and I think that Alex, you're building a really awesome community that's so needed. So grateful to join. By way of introduction, I've been in the talent space for about 15 years. I co-founded the North American business of a large specialist recruitment company, so sort of built that from ground up to around 300 million, working with some of the largest brands globally, and really growing and leading our staff to over 500, and more importantly, supporting thousands of candidates to find their opportunities and grow their careers. So it's been an incredible privilege to be part of that. And then more recently, I stepped away from that business and launched 2 startups. So one is a search firm focused around companies that are hiring and retaining diverse talent into their leadership and exec teams. And then the other is BlocHaus, which is focused on supporting partners globally to hire the best talent in blockchain and Web3. Alex mentioned my podcast, so Web3 Disruptors, focused on women changing the game in Web3. And then it would also be remiss of me not to mention my other job, mom to my 2 boys, not quite as financially rewarding, but hugs and kisses make up for it. And, I think most importantly, having done the juggle now for the last 11 years, I do have a tremendous amount of respect for working mums, and I'm a huge advocate for them as relates to talent. So BlocHaus, we support brands globally across the blockchain ecosystem, so DeFi, digital assets, infrastructure, the whole spectrum. One of the things that had resonated for me about blockchain is that promise to bring a more equitable and sort of inclusive world through the technology, and is one of the reasons that I definitely remain quite passionate about it. Some of our values is around high performance, so expect it of ourselves and our clients. Equity and inclusion, so we want to represent companies that honour and celebrate diversity and do offer an inclusive environment, or alternatively companies that are embarking on that journey with a very authentic commitment to getting there. I think the other component is trust and transparency. So it's not something that the recruitment industry is always known for, but it was certainly part of our founder DNA. So we offer that to our clients, and we expect the same from both clients and candidates. It's one of the areas that we got very good at assessing projects that we were comfortable representing and proud to represent, and politely declining the ones that we didn't have that level of confidence in. So with all that said, founding BlocHaus in 2022 was an interesting time. So the market went rapidly from cooling to a sort of deep freeze is the way I would describe it. And hiring obviously sort of reached an all-time low. Most people will have seen the number of layoffs. And, in a game of supply and demand, you basically had hundreds of candidates competing for very, very few jobs. A lot of candidates exited the space. They went back to Web2 or traditional finance. And there were some amazing candidates that ultimately were out of work for 7-8 months and sometimes more. So I definitely say that 2023 from hiring perspective was a game of survival for a lot of people. And so it is so refreshing to be able to say that 2024, there's this big shift. It's a brighter story. It's a faster market. Most companies are hiring. There's a lot more money flowing into the space. We're incredibly busy right now around, engineering, marketing, product, sales, and business development are all having their day. It's a really good time to be a community manager or a developer advocate. And so, whenever I asked to speak on the hiring landscape, a lot of people want to know, are we in a state of abundance? Is it, in other words, are the candidates back in the driving seat? And my response to that would be currently, companies are finding it already more difficult to hire specialist talent than they did a year ago. There is going to be more turnover because some candidates who took jobs for less money or that didn't offer the right career progression, those were interim steps. And you can imagine that they're going to effectively look to reposition themselves. And so there'll be some natural attrition and turnover from that, and then slowly as an industry we'll need to reattract the candidates that burn out from the space. But when you consider the roller coaster of the last few years, the one thing I would say is market conditions are always outside of our control largely. And so the piece that I want to talk about today is the thing that we can all do to give ourselves the best opportunity to thrive regardless of market cycle. So that common denominator that I saw in the bear market when there was a few opportunities, and now in a bull market where there's so many opportunities that you could potentially miss the one that's right for you. And the people that invested in their personal brands, those were the ones that continue to attract opportunities regardless of the external market. So how has personal brand helped some of those candidates? Well, clearly, when there's hundreds of people competing for the same opportunity, they stood out. Opportunities found them, right? So the benefits of that are clear in a bad market, but in a good market, when you've got so many different signals and there's a lot of noise, that's actually really valuable. The opportunities that align with you can effectively sort of find you. And then finally, I would say that personal brands have got 10 times as much reach as company brands. We're wired to follow people over companies, and so companies will absolutely consider your brand to be their competitive advantage. And so that absolutely impacts your desirability as a candidate and can be a significant differentiator in terms of your market worth in the broader sense. And so in today's market, especially for commercial roles, clients will look up your social presence to get an understanding of the visibility for your brand. And that can either be an enabler or a detractor. When we speak about personal brands, it can sometimes feel quite nebulous when in fact it can be quite clearly defined. So, personal brand is that process of defining and promoting what you stand for as an individual, skills, experience, values. It's the things that differentiate you. And so my couple of considerations that I would point out when people are building a personal brand in order to leverage that for career growth is you have to build your personal brand before you need to leverage it. So often people start focusing on their personal brand because they're on the job market or because they want a promotion or they're planning to launch something. You've got to invest in it on a more consistent basis. And then the other point is you want to be very intentional about the brand that you're creating. So it isn't about just getting on stages or pushing out content. It's about first asking yourself the question, what do you want to be famous for? Why? And that why question is really important because you're figuring out then how it really aligns with your longer term objectives. And then how will you add value within the community that you choose to build or that you choose to join? There's lots of different ways that we can build a personal brand. So these are all sort of examples, but clearly the key is to choose a few different pillars for your personal brand and then show up consistently. I would add some context around speaking engagements right now. This is a really hot topic in Web3 because of the number of all male panels, which are apparently back in fashion. So if you do enjoy speaking or you're actively trying to speak more, make sure that you're in the right speaker directories. And if you work for an make sure that they know that you want to speak on panels and be ready to articulate which discussions and which topics you can really add perspective to and ask the business to sponsor or to advocate for you. It's obviously a huge win-win because it's exposure for the company and it's also exposure for you. But whichever of these channels you choose, I think the key is that a blended approach across a few channels is the most effective way to build a brand. I want to bring it back to career management. So the epicenter of personal branding is LinkedIn. So I want to spend a bit of time talking about how you could leverage this to create more opportunities for yourself. So the numbers tell us on LinkedIn that there's 900 million members on LinkedIn, but only 1% actively create content or share posts. So it's a near captive audience. There isn't any other social platform that's going to give that level of organic reach. And it's the most used platform for major organizations. So 4 out of 5 users drive business decisions. In other words, it's not just about the number of people on the platform, but it's also the relationships and the proximity to influencing and making that decision that makes it quite unique. We've got 50 million companies, millions of job opportunities. There's actually a 300% increase year on year for blockchain opportunities. And then the audience, considering that we're in a decentralized space, it's a phenomenal opportunity to build a global brand because the audience is across 200 different countries. And then, we've got 46 million users that are in the tech sector, and there's consistently more and more that's coming out around blockchain on the platform. I think LinkedIn is also an interesting place when you look at the different ways that people are differentiating themselves on the platform. I follow this guy, Adam Robinson, and he really leverages storytelling to take his community on a journey to building the company. So he shares the financials, he shares the successes, the failures are the things that people probably learn the most from. And in the process, he's attracting his ideal clients. Mita Malik is also another great example of, her personal brand is so strong around driving inclusion in the workplace that you almost forget that she is the head of inclusion for Carter. So if you flip this around and think about this from the perspective of hiring, for her organization, when it comes to being an ambassador for their values, her brand speaks volumes, and it's an inevitable asset for them when they're looking to attract talent into the organization. So we're in Web3. Is this a valuable platform for people in Web3? Is anyone hanging out here? I would say yes. There's tons of incredible and really loud voices in Web3 on the platform. Here's a few of my favorites. But going back to one of the initial stats that I shared, only 1% of people are active here, so there's plenty of room to add your voice to this. If you do want to leverage the platform, there's 5 things that I would focus on. So profile mastery, content strategy, networking, engagement, and outreach. So on profile mastery, if the only thing that you do is optimize your profile, you'll be in good shape because every action that you take on LinkedIn is actually designed to drive people back to your profile. So when they do click on your profile, you want it to be compelling. You want it to reflect your authority in the space. In practical terms, if I'm a job seeker, the more information on my profile, the more chance I have of getting found. So if I want a new job as a lead solidity engineer, then my profile needs to package up my achievements around this. I need to have keywords for discoverability. I need to highlight where I've led teams. And the same is true for hiring managers. If you're trying to attract talent, you can have a lot of eyes on your profile. And as the market gets more competitive, candidates are going to increasingly evaluate the quality of the team in place, and particularly the leadership. So you want to have an attractive profile, because that can make all the difference in terms of candidates coming inbound to you and also showcasing credibility. So here's your checklist. Do you have a personalized URL? Having the right picture in place is going to generate 14 times more views. Your banner image is prime real estate. And then this headline underneath the name, that's the snapshot that people see. When you're looking at somebody's profile on the phone, when a recruiter's looking, all that you see is those first few words. So you want to make it count. That can be your job title, especially if it's got some gravitas, or you can create a headline that's focused on the problem that you solve, or you can utilize bullet points, which is the direction that I went down if you offer a range of different services. About section, again, it should reinforce your brand. What problem do you solve is the point of focus. Impact, what have you achieved? And then your call to action is how you can help other people. And again, focusing on keywords for discoverability. And then that featured section that you see on the slide, think about that as your shop window, your professional shop window, which is this huge opportunity for social proof. So top posts, articles, links, awards, everything that you want to sort of demonstrate credibility should be in that featured section. And then the other point that I would make here, aside from articles and work experience, is around recommendations. So every single successful project, event, collaboration, or service, those are all opportunities for a glowing recommendation, either to receive one or to give a recommendation. We can say that we're awesome and share all the things that we've done, but it is so much more compelling when somebody else says it. So it is impressive when you go on a profile and you see the who's who in a field giving recommendations. So 91% of people are willing to give recommendations, but only 11% of people ever ask for them. So it's often a key area that we overlook. Then we've got network expansion. So if your profile is right, you want to think about optimizing your network. So with LinkedIn, there's a few things to consider. So the first is LinkedIn lets you have 30,000 connections and unlimited followers. And that's huge because it gives this unparalleled opportunity for reach, because a connection isn't just a connection. It creates a ripple effect. Which effectively means that when you connect with someone, you indirectly tap into their entire follower base. So if somebody interacts with your content, if they like, if they comment, if they share, it then gets displayed to all of their followers. So to illustrate, with just 5,000 followers, your actual reach could be closer to 150,000. You also want to make sure that the quality of your network is right. And so that means, are they all in your target area? So for example, if I'm creating content about blockchain, LinkedIn is going to show it to all my first degree connections. Well, I've got a lot of people in blockchain and Web3, so they're going to engage. And then LinkedIn is going to show that to the second degree connections and the third degree connections, and finally the broader network. But if my content doesn't resonate with my first degree connections because they're not in blockchain, then it's never going to make it to the later stages. It's never going to go anywhere else because it's going to get deprioritized in the LinkedIn algorithm. And then finally, I would say, don't be shy about connecting with people you don't know, even if they're high profile or they feel unattainable. In my experience, if you personalize a connection request so they know why, you are likely to get a more favorable response. I'm not a marketer, but I do focus a lot on content in order to sort of build my brand. I can share my approach, which has been to follow a general rule that my post needs to have value. It needs to educate, entertain, inspire, or inform. If it doesn't hit one of those pillars, then why am I posting it? I do think storytelling is a really natural gateway to connection. I use direct calls to action very, very sparingly. You shouldn't need to sort of sell through your content. It's about showing value. I incorporate a lot of images or videos to humanize and personalize the content, and then consistency for me is kind of key. The first few lines of anything that we put out on LinkedIn is kind of crucial. You want people hitting see more. That's going to do wonders for how broadly your post is then distributed and shared. And the other thing is to make sure that we are engaging in real time with the people that engage on our content. So the idea is to create and to facilitate conversation. I would then say sort of finally around engagement and outreach. Engagement isn't just about what we put out on the platform, but it's equally important to build your brand through strong engagement on what other people are putting out there. So if you find people in your niche, add your perspective to their content. If their audience is going to notice you, so think about a field that you want to get into. If that audience notices you, that's a win. The author will notice you. Perhaps that's a hiring manager that you want to work for. And then LinkedIn will also give your content a boost if you're engaging more broadly on the platform. So I would say sort of best practice is to make sure that we are engaging and drop in at least 3 insightful comments in an area that you want to build authority in order to really build brand. And then analytics. LinkedIn have got some really great analytics. So you have this opportunity, to really sort of contextualize and understand who's searching for you, who's viewing your things. I've tracked my statistics, and there's been a point in time over a 90-day period where I've been able to reach 1 million views. So my final point would be that reach and engagement are great for building a high-profile brand, but the most important thing is figuring out what you're trying to do on the platform, whether that's to land a job and connect with people in the space that's meaningful for you and what you're trying to accomplish. If you reach one person that's relevant, then it's worth it. So yeah, I think that would be kind of my key takeaway is you can build some really, really valuable and impactful relationships on LinkedIn. My largest client came from a conversation that I started on LinkedIn. And I think it's a really, really valuable tool when it comes to talent attraction and sort of career management, and more broadly sort of considering how to leverage for your next gig. So I hope it's helpful. I'm happy to connect with anyone on all things Web3. And if you're looking for a job, or you're hiring, or you just want general advice on optimizing your profile, then happy to sort of to connect, and obviously connect on LinkedIn, surprise, and happy to answer any questions.